Alright, here we go. Sorry the furnace is running. It's cold outside, and now I gotta try and melt the rest of the snow. Ooh, pine needles. So it's gonna be running in the background. It's winter time. So we got our 2004 Chevy Trailblazer, 5.3 liter LS V8, all aluminum, LM4. I'm not an LS guy, but I used the interwebs and I found out like all the letters and whiz bangs and stuff. My plan is pull this engine out. It's got, what I say, 162 on it. Pull the engine out, keep all the assorted bits and digicals for it. I think it might be drive-by-wire. I'm not sure, it probably is, so I'll have to save the gas pedal. And I've got the 4L60E transmission that came out of my two-wheel drive S10 truck I bought for parts to marry up to this, and this will make a good modern swap for something. You can get aftermarket harness for these. You can run standalone aftermarket harness with the 4L60E. It's like $1,000 for a harness or something like that, $1,200, whatever. About half the cost of a carburetor just to put on a regular engine. So everybody's into the LS game. This one I picked up super cheap from a coworker. So I couldn't pass it up. This should be a good engine to swap into something. Not sure what yet, but we're going to yank it out of here. So I'm going to start disassembling. Looks like the core support on bolts, take out the grill, the headlights, all this, get all the front nonsense off. I'm giving the transmission and transfer case to my buddy. I traded it for the Camaro with the Corvette out back, so I can pull that out too. Essentially everything else is junk, saving the wheels and tires, the catalytic converters. The rest of the truck's rotted. There's a hole in the frame, the doors are rotted, the interior is hashed, so I'm going to go down the road to the junkyard. Alright, I'm getting things torn down here. Check out this clutch fan. This thing is a hydraulic clutch fan, but it's also got this electric hookup on the front, which I guess locks up the clutch if you get too hot. But it's a standard GM thread-on deal here. It threads onto the water pump stud. And a little secret to get these off, if you don't know which way they come off with a nut, is you look at the vanes, and this one would spin counterclockwise to suck air through the radiator in the engine. The nut on the back side here turns the same way to loosen it. So if the vanes are facing this way, the fan spins counterclockwise, and it also spins counterclockwise to go onto the water pump. That way it can never loosen up and fall off. So to get this off, I don't have the tool to put on here, so I took a big wrench, put on the nut, I put a vice grip on the water pump pulley, and I take my deadbolt hammer and I go kurt, and just knock the wrench, and it loosens up the nut, and I spin it right off the water pump. I'm sure you guys who work on GM vehicles probably know that. I don't work on them that often, but that's how I got this off. Now, I have an idea here. Check this out. Hold on one second. Here's a trick. If I put this engine in something else, what if I don't want to run that big electric clutch fan? I just happen to have saved a clutch fan off the 4.3 liter V6 that I took out of the Chevy S10. I'm using a transmission out of. Actually, look at this. It's got the rotation right on there. So I've got this mechanical clutch fan that should go right back onto here. If the threads are the same, I'm assuming they would be. Now I've just got this regular standard mechanical clutch fan that threads onto the same thing. It's probably the right size. It did a 4.3 V6, but this thing's got a lot of blades on it. It's a little bit smaller. It's about the same diameter as the one in there, but this, you know, in a different type vehicle, I'm sure this fan would be fine. So I'm glad I saved this. I just had it laying around. I actually took it off the engine and set it down, and it didn't go to the junkyard with the truck, and I didn't really have any use for it. But it's just been laying on the floor. And check this out. It fits the 5.3. So that was Fortuitous. Fortuitous is the word of the day. Fortuitous. Fortuitous. That was fortunate. Bam! So, there we go. Once again, saving old parts comes in handy. So I've got the radiator drained out. I'm going to take the coolant hoses off, cut the tranny lines, take the radiator out. Got to disconnect the power steering lines from the rack. I'm going to try to take the harness all loose, leave the harness with the engine just so I have it. Just like that. I'll probably take the computer out and I'll save all the electrics with it just to have it. I got to get the mass airflow sensor, whatever that is, out of the air box there, and I'll keep pulling. I'll check back in with you in a second when I'm a little further down the way here. Okay, it's a couple hours later. It's getting late. I got the 5.3 here. I ended up cutting the harness free because if I use this engine, I'm going to just get a Holley Terminex or whatever they call it, standalone system with the digicals and have it self-program. I'm not going to use cobble all the factory electronics in. They make harnesses that you can use the stock computer and then you can get it reflashed to get rid of the VATs and all that stuff, whatever that means, the vehicle anti-theft system. This is a drive-by-wire throttle body, so I'd have to get the kit for that. But I'll probably, since I'm going to couple this to a 4L60E two-wheel drive transmission, I'd probably just get the whole Holley kit. That's like, I don't know, $1,500. It's got a touch screen. You can put all it in, tune it, run the whole thing. So, which seems like a lot of money to make this thing work, but if you consider, you know, you've got a regular small block Chevy, a new Holley carburetor's $500, like an Edelbrock air gap intake's $500, and then you put a tranny behind it, which doesn't need a controller for like a Turbo 350, but you're almost the same amount of money as is to make this thing run just by plugging all this stuff in and making it go. So I'll probably do that. So I hacked this off so I can keep all the connectors of the engine, and I got the computer just with it, but I didn't need to start trying to take the fuse box apart and chase the wires. I just ended up cutting it. And then speaking of cutting, check this out. Under the truck here, I cut the exhaust out of the way, cut the cats off. Speaking of cutting, look at the passenger side frame rail. Holy moly! Severe rot, real bad. I found out, I knew I had a hole in it. I put the jack stand here and it went and caved into the floor, or into the frame. Look at, this is real bad junk. Got the transfer case up here, the electric shift motor. I've cut the aluminum drive shaft in the back, which seems sacrilege, but whatever. Not going to reuse it because it's not going to fit anything I got. So I cut it off. So I got the slip yoke. My friend's getting the transmission and transfer case, so I'll give him the slip yoke with it. But I've got to get the front drive shaft out here. And then I'm thinking about just taking, because this frame's so rotted, cutting the frame here, cutting the frame there, and dropping this whole cradle or in front, everything, the suspension and everything right down on the ground, because the front axle on a Trailblazer goes through the oil pan of the 5.3. So I've got to take that apart somehow, and this is severely rotted and hard to get to, and I think it's going to be easier, just like in the junkyard you'll see at the pick and pull, and when the guys do it, they'll torch the frame right off the firewall and drop the whole thing down and get the engine out. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut the frame where it's rotted, cut the other side. I already cut all the brake lines and coolant lines out of the way over here. I'll probably take the transmission crossmember. I'll probably just cut that here and cut it here, because I doubt it's going to unbolt very easily, and just kind of settle this whole thing down, and then drop the front of the frame, right out from under the truck. Okay, here we go. This is the exciting part. I've cut the frame on that side. It's actually loose. I cut the 3/4, or cut the top and the sides of this side. I'm going to let it try to fold down, hopefully. I've got the jack under the front to hold this. I've loosened up the cab mounts here, which I got to, look at this, finger tight. I'm going to run these cab, or body mount bolts out. And then I'm hoping to have the frame like hinge and come right down. This one's already dropping. Where's my cab mount bolt wrench? Hopefully to have the frame come hinge down with the engine. I've cut the half shafts as well, and I left the wheel end in the wheels. Then I pulled the half shafts out of the transmission, or not transmission, front differential, which is bolted to the oil pan. So let's let this down and see what happens. Oh, whoa! Something's happening. Something's happening. Oh, holy moly! Okay. Oh, you know what? Shoot! I never unbolted the steering rack from the steering column. That would be a bonus. Oh, how do you do that? Oh, no! Back up in here somehow. Okay, I got the master cylinder unbolted because it's full of brake fluid. I just left the brake lines hang. And then I took the bolt out of the steering column into the rack. So hopefully that'll do something here. Let's go down a little bit and see. Woo, it's windy out there. Cold and windy. Oh, oh, oh. We're dropping now. Careful. Ready, hold it. Now what? The steering is still... No, it's loose. Alright. What am I on? Transmission's still up in the air. This is coming down. Got some... That's loose. That's loose. Which it's doing. I'm going to have to cut the other side of the... Whoa, whoa, easy now. Oh, that's a lot of coolant. That's a lot of coolant. Ah! Dang it. I still got the fuel lines hooked up in the back. I'm going to disconnect those underneath here when the furnace stops running. I'll shut that off. Get my coolant lines done. It's pretty much just hooked up to the frame rail. Just got to cut the edge of the frame rail and it should be loose. Okay, I cut the fuel lines, drained them down, got the frame cut. So now this thing is kind of like riding on the suspension. And I don't know why it's not going down more. I think the transmission crossmember is stuck in the chassis. See if I roll this out of here. It's stuck in the frame. Yeah, I think I should be able to drive this right out from under here now. See? Oh yeah. No problem. Whoa. Alright, now, you're too tall to get the motor out. There's puking transmission fluid everywhere. Not yet. Tang, 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 tang. Drive this mofo right out. What do I hear? Fluids? I hear fluids. Everything is A-okay. A-okay here. Now, that's awesome. That's what I call engine removal. Makes a nice little LS cart. Roll around to your LS cart here. Boom, handled. On your truck into an LS cart and just roll out your LS. Just like that. Didn't have any real damage. What is this? That's a fuel system. That's a coolant pipe. I can hack some of this stuff off the back. Got our four-wheel drive 4L60E here. My friend is getting this. I've saved, I should be able to unbolt it now. right from the back of the engine pulled off, unbolt the torque converter, and take that off for them. And then that'll give me some more room to get to the body or the engine bolts, which I don't even know. Man, they were still right down in there. This thing is tight. Oh, actually, yeah, then a little, you can't really see it now, but the axles go through the oil pan of this engine. The front differential actually goes right through the oil pan. So that'll come out and I can unbolt that, and it like unplugs the oil pan. I can unbolt that later. But as you can see, the block is aluminum, the heads are aluminum. This is the all aluminum 5.3 LM4. It's got the cast headers here, which are a little scaly. They'll probably blast up all right to use. It looks like all these bolts have been replaced. It looks like stainless steel bolts and nuts. Like those are steel, but like these look like they're stainless maybe. Like some of these had broken manifolds in it before. A couple of new coil packs. But so you're basically your all aluminum 5.3 LS right here. Man, look at the rust in this frame. Oh my goodness. Terrible. Well, this has been quite fun. We got the 4L60E off here. I had a heck of a time busting free the, the pin on this side. It took me probably an hour to get the transmission off. Had to block it up and wiggle it, beat on it with a dead blow hammer. Right now I'm just waiting for a little bit of oil to drain out of the torque converter. I gotta take the starter off so I can get to the bolts, spin the torque converter around, and take the converter off. My buddy's getting the transmission in a transfer case, so that's gonna go with that. But the 5.3 is one step closer. See, it's all aluminum block. Now the next problem is I can get to the nuts on the motor mount here on this side fairly easily, but on the passenger side they set the motor way over to the one side. I don't know how this is gonna work. Back in here, hiding away, it'd be really better if this manifold is off, but I don't trust not snapping the studs off and the heads, and I really don't want to do that, or the bolts I should say. So I don't think I'm going to pull the manifold off. I'm going to try to get in there. There's a nut on the bottom. I might be able to get through the frame, maybe, and get up through and get it loose. But that's the last thing holding this engine in here is the two motor mounts. This has been a struggle and a half. I had probably 4 or 5 hours yesterday by the time I got going on the thing, and I've had another 4 hours a day. It's like 8 hours to get to this point to get this stupid thing out of here. This is luckily you guys are watching all 8 hours of it. You would be bored out of your mind because it was a lot of clanging and banging and monkeying around. I'm going to keep struggling, get this thing off of here, and try to finally liberate it from the frame so I can get that rolled back under and tied back into the truck so I can get this thing mobile and get it the heck out of here. Well, after more hours of wrenching, it took me almost an hour to get the torque converter off because I could only get my fingers and a wrench and open end wrench in there forever. I've rolled this back a little bit. I've got the bolts out of the motor mounts, but they're steel motor mounts that bolt through the frame by the suspension here, which I can't really get out with the suspension here. And the differential's hung up on that one. This one is loose. The engine's on the engine stand, but see, it's kind of loose here, but it's like pinned, and I'm trying to get this to go forwards or backwards one way or the other to get out from under the motor mount bracket thing. At least on that side, you can't really get the differential out very easily now. I just need a little bit more and the thing will come free and be out of here. But this has been like a monumental struggle. If you're looking for an LS, I suggest getting it out of something besides a Trailblazer, because this is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how they put it in here. Probably with the manifolds off and everything else. And I don't know. It's a nightmare. Nightmare! And without the suspension, you could get the bolts out better, I guess. I don't know. Everything is super rusty. Woo! I did it! Finally! Yes! Man, that was 100% more involved than I thought it was going to be. What a nightmare. I still have the differential to take off the oil pan. It's got a couple of bolts and it just comes out through the oil pan. But what a nightmare to get this freaking 5.3 aluminum LS out of this Trailblazer. What a nightmare. I don't want to have to see one of these for a long time again. So I'm about shot here, worn out. Got a freaking absolute mess all over the place. This is a disaster. But I'm going to pull the differential out, like I said, get this thing reeled out of the way, set down on the ground, and then I can wheel the frame back under here, bolt it back under the truck, and get rid of this thing, send it down the road. Everybody's like, yeah, getting the LS game would be fun, they said. Not a big deal. This is the engine you want, they said. Yeah, they're a lot easier to get out of trucks than they are Trailblazers. Holy moly. Well, anyways, I got a good 5.3 all aluminum LM4 LS motor with a buck 62 on it, with a 460 LE transmission that I pulled out of my yellow S10 project truck, or parts truck. So now I've got the ultimate like street rod drivetrain, or anything drivetrain, all aluminum motor, overdrive transmission. Can put the Holly Dominator or whatever you call it on in there, and have a full. Oh, I can't forget to get the throttle pedal out. Drive by wire. Yeah. Anyways, I'll have the full shebang here, LS action for a future project. But this was a struggle. So that's it. I'm going to clean all this up. Next time, we'll be back on the Dodge truck project. I'm going to guess probably putting the rest of that engine together. And I'm waiting for the frame to get back from the sandblaster, and then we can start assembling that. But this was an absolute disaster. Took the entire weekend to do this. I can't believe it, but it was super cold out, so I got to work in here with the heat on. That's nice. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hopefully something way easier than this. But bam, you'll see it here at the Quick Speed Shop. I'm a professional. Don't try this at home.